I had a young lady reach out to me to share her story time with me, and I'm going to share it with you all. And this is a cautionary tale. And before people start jumping on this young lady, she was 19 when it happened. And as illuminated in the story, she couldn't go back home. She did make some missteps, but she couldn't go back home. As she said, her home life was also toxic. So I know people are going to be like, she should have done this. She shouldn't have done this. At this particular point, we do know and understand that some mistakes were made, but people share their stories with me because we offer grace and we're able to use these stories so that the next young lady can zig where this young lady zagged. We're doing this so we can help the next woman because not all women, not all girls get the type of instruction or warnings from their mothers or their aunties or their big cousins. Not all of us get that. And some of us have to learn as we go and hopefully, come out on the other side unscathed. So that's just my buy-in for this. But let's talk about this young lady's story. She says, "Hi, Burb. I follow your stories on my main page. I'm sorry, on my main account. But I wanted to share my experience with a guy I dated over a year ago. I'm in my early 20s and from Africa, and the story is quite long. Can I type it here?" I'm like, absolutely, go ahead. Let me see the story. And she says, "Thank you so much. I'm going to start typing before I go to sleep because it's a long one." She says, "As I mentioned before, I'm from Africa and my ex and I met off of Instagram around 2020. I was 19 at the time and he was roughly 26. Then we eventually met up and started dating on and off shortly afterwards. I will say there were many red flags that I missed as I was naive and just believed that because I got a guy with a well paying job in finance, whilst I was a fresh graduate, things were paying out and I'd get married to him one day. After university and a year or so working, I told him that I didn't like the career path that I'd chosen. So he told me he was willing to help me pivot my career into the finance industry, which he did assist me with in the end. He also offered to let me stay with him as he trained me through the transition. I had to be the stay at home girlfriend, and he was the breadwinner. I couldn't go back to my family to help me with my career pivot as they were toxic. Hence why I chose to be his stay at home girlfriend, thinking he was actually going to be kind to me. We spent an entire we spent an entire year in this traditional household dynamic, and boy was it the biggest mistake of my life. Things started off so well, and I even used my last paycheck to furnish our apartment that he was paying for. I made sure I didn't ask for too much because I wanted him to know I was grateful for the little he was doing for me. I slowly started noticing that this man was irresponsible with his money. He would literally blow all of his money on alcohol before paying for electricity. There were times where the apartment had no food, no electricity, and I had to do several IOUs to my friends just to survive until his next payday. They didn't know this. I used to make up excuses and promise I'd pay as soon as I landed a job. Then, during his drunken nights at the club, he ended up cheating on me, but I took him back and I really couldn't leave because I was still unemployed and waiting to transition to finance. We ended up fighting over the cheating thing. Then he secretly removed me from the lease, which ended up saving my life months down the line. Roughly 6 months later, I finally get a part time job in finance, but it wasn't enough for me to live on my own. So I insisted on contributing to the bills whilst I upskilled myself to get a permanent job. We had so many fights in between. Anytime I disagreed with him, he would throw me out of the apartment and told me I was homeless. It was so bad that the one time he switched off the mains to the electricity and locked the bathroom doors when I was on my period so he could teach me a lesson. Then he just started spiraling mentally or something because to this day, I do not understand what he did next. Around 9 months into the year, my ex got fired from his job and he didn't inform me about it. Mind you, the rent he was paying for the apartment was double the entire income I was earning in my part time job. I asked him about it and he went full blown abusive on me. He broke my appliances, threw plates at me, left my legs with scars. It was such a horrible time in my life. I have tears typing this out because the memories are still so fresh. I also want to mention that he would call the cops on me constantly to scare me into doing whatever he wanted. If we had a disagreement, he would lie to the cops and say he doesn't know me and they should arrest me, which they didn't, but our police departments are known for being inefficient. Things got so bad that his landlord came to evict him and gave him 2 months' notice. During this time, he didn't bother looking for a job and was just begging family members for money until he couldn't anymore. He also became more abusive when I asked his best friend to try to encourage him into employment again. Funny enough, as life was falling apart, the gods or the universe or whoever was looking down on me finally blessed me with a permanent job, and I managed to find an available apartment to rent towards the end of that year. I still felt so indebted to him for helping my career out, so I took him along with me, hoping he would change. Well, he 100% did not change and ended up cheating on me and secretly swiping my card and stealing my money to pay for his side pieces. I guess this was my breaking point because I decided to kick him out of my apartment, and the man had the gall to call the police department and lie to them and say that I'm evicting him out of an apartment that was rightfully his. It didn't land, as I told the officers that I paid for everything on my own and his bummy self had nothing to contribute. He ended up staying in a whole homeless shelter by choice for a week until he asked me to contact his family and I made arrangements for him to go home. He eventually forced himself to get a job 2 months later and hoped it would get us back together, but I blocked him from everything and have no contact with him. I remember every now and then that I am so lucky to be in a day and age where feminism gives me the opportunity to start over and be financially independent. I'm in my early 20s, but I really want to raise awareness to people my age that is so important to have your own. I wouldn't have survived and thrived at this moment if it wasn't for the freedom of choice that feminism gave me. I'm really grateful to be alive and be able to share this story with you, Burb. She said, "Oh, yes, I forgot to mention that when he took me off the lease, it was a blessing in disguise, as he ended up owing his landlord thousands in rent. And I mean, about 3 months worth of rent ended up being unpaid before the eviction. His landlord legally couldn't make me liable for the rent my ex owed due to this. So my permanent job paycheck belonged to me and wasn't spent paying back his owed rent." Great. That is amazing. I'm glad that this young lady got out and she didn't spend too much of her time and energy on this man. I do want to go back to her story though. So we've already said that this young lady had nowhere to go back to. And so she had some money, but she drained it buying furniture and buying things for the apartment. And then she didn't want to ask for too much from him, but she didn't have any savings. So she was completely reliant on this man. And she was doing this traditional household. The man is the lead. He makes the decisions and all of that. But what happens when the man is the lead and he's sitting up here blowing money on alcohol and women and clubbing and not paying bills? This is the reason why women need to make sure that you have things in line. Young ladies, do not pair up with these people. Do not move in with these people. Get you a roommate. Stay in school as long as you can until you're able, or stay in like college housing until you're able to transition out if you can't go back home, because this could end up happening where this man is fully in control and can kick her out when he feels like it, can control water, locking doors, calling the police, and all of that. You do not want to be in this situation where you have to grovel to get back home, where you have to ask your friends for money for food. You don't want to end up in this position. So hopefully these messages will continue to get out to the younger ladies and even the older ladies sometimes. Join the conversation. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.